It was Christmas Eve, and as usual, I found myself standing in front of the stove, stirring the pot roast for the umpteenth time. The rich smell filled the kitchen, a smell that was supposed to mean family and joy and tradition. But this time, something inside me snapped. I was done. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Nancy Perota. I'm 68 years old, and I live in Tampa, Florida. I'm a retired nurse. For 40 years, my entire life was about taking care of people, managing emergencies, and doing what needed to be done. I guess I never really learned how to stop. Even in retirement, I'm the one who organizes the neighborhood watch. I'm the one who remembers everyone's birthday. And I am the one who makes Christmas happen. I've always seen myself as the heart of the family, the one who keeps all the traditions alive. But as I stood there, with my back aching and my feet screaming at me from standing on that tile floor all day, I realized the heart was just plain tired. My husband, Michael, is retired too, and I want to be clear, Michael is a good man. He's kind, he's a wonderful grandfather, and I love him. But Michael hates conflict. He avoids it like the plague. His life motto is to just stay out of the way. And as I was standing there in that kitchen, sweating over the stove and looking at the mountain of dishes piling up, where was Michael? He was in the living room in his recliner watching a football game. He was staying out of the way. He thinks that's a form of help. He thinks that as long as he's not making a mess or getting under my feet, he's contributing. But what it really means is that he's leaving the entire burden of the holiday on my shoulders. The planning, the mental checklist of all the ingredients, the nonstop shopping trips, the wrapping, the baking, the decorating, and all of the cooking. All of it. It all falls on me. And he knows I'm overwhelmed. I know he does. He sees the frantic look in my eyes. But he just doesn't know what to do about it. So he tunes it out with the noise of the TV. And that, in its own quiet way, feels like a betrayal. This whole production, this giant, expensive meal, it wasn't for us. It was for our son, Ralph, and his wife, Julie. They live right here in Tampa, maybe a 15-minute drive away. And for the last 3 years, 3 Christmases in a row, they have shown up to my house empty-handed. I don't mean they just forgot a side dish. I mean nothing. The first year, they walked in late, right as I was pulling the roast out of the oven. Julie handed me a small drugstore box of chocolates that looked like a last-minute gas station purchase. The second year, they brought absolutely nothing. Not a bottle of wine, not a bouquet of flowers, not even a bag of ice. Ralph just walked in, sniffed the air, and said, "Wow, smells great, Mom. We're starving." But last year was the one that really stung. They showed up late again. Ate a full 3-course meal, the prime rib, the scalloped potatoes, the fresh green bean casserole, the cheesecake I made from scratch. They ate until they were stuffed. And then, as we were sitting at the table, with all the dishes piled around us, Ralph had the nerve to ask me if I could lend him some money to help with their car payment. I had just spent over $400 on groceries for this one meal, and he was asking me for money. And Michael, my conflict-hating husband, he just cleared his throat, got up, and said, "Who wants coffee?" It's not like Ralph is our only child. We have a daughter, Susan. She lives all the way across the country in Oregon with her husband and kids. Susan, she gets it. She calls me every few days, especially around the holidays. "Mom, how are you? Are you doing too much? Please tell me you're letting Dad help." 2 days ago, a big box arrived from Oregon. Inside was a beautiful hand-knit throw blanket for me because she knows I get cold. There was a new set of grilling tools for Michael, and she had even sent gift cards for Ralph and Julie. She sent us gifts, and she even bought gifts for them. In my Christmas card, there was a check for $200. The note said, "Mom, please use this for the Christmas dinner. Do not argue with me. I love you." That's Susan. Thoughtful. considerate. And it just makes Ralph's behavior, his entitlement, his laziness, so much more glaring. I find myself wishing Susan lived closer, and then I feel guilty for even thinking it. So there I was, Christmas Eve, staring into a pot of roast that had been cooking for hours. My feet were swollen. The kitchen was a disaster zone of flour on the counter and pots in the sink. And this resentment, it was just simmering, bubbling up just like the gravy. It wasn't just at Ralph and Julie anymore. I was angry at Michael, sitting in that living room, pretending he couldn't hear the clang of the pots and pans. I was angry at myself. Why do I do this? Why do I let them treat me like a free restaurant? A built-in maid. I'm 68 years old. I'm a retired nurse. My back aches, and my hands are getting stiff. And I'm standing here, cooking a feast for a son who won't even bring a bottle of soda, and a husband who won't even offer to wash a single pot. That's when it happened. I just stopped stirring. I turned off the flame. I looked at the wooden spoon in my hand, all covered in sauce, and I thought, I'm done. I am completely, utterly, and totally done. This is the last year. This is the last time I am going to be the only one who cares, the only one who tries. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do or say, but I knew deep in my bones that this was the end of Christmas as we knew it. I stood there in the silence of my own kitchen, the steam from the pot, roast rising up in front of my face. That feeling, I'm done, wasn't a flare-up. It was a foundation cracking. It was the weight of years, not just this one night. As I leaned against the counter, my mind just started replaying the evidence. I didn't even have to dig for it. It all came flooding back. I thought about 3 years ago. I had made a beautiful crown roast of pork. It took me all day to get it right. The grandkids were smaller then, running around with new toys, and the house was loud and happy. We had finished eating, and I was just starting to stack the dessert plates when Ralph followed me into the kitchen. Michael was in the living room, showing my grandson how to work a new remote control car. Ralph leaned against the counter, casual-like, and said, "Hey, Mom, that was great. Listen, I was wondering, Julie and I are a little short for the car payment this month. We were thinking you could, just lend us a couple $100 till my next check." I stopped. I was holding a stack of plates. "Lend you money? Right after I'd spent a fortune on this meal?" He said it so easily, as if he were asking to borrow a cup of sugar. I didn't even know what to say. I felt my face get hot. And right then, Michael walked in. He must have heard the last part. He saw the look on my face, and he saw Ralph standing there, expectant. And what did my husband do? My partner? He cleared his throat, looked right past both of us, and said, "Well, that was a wonderful meal. Nancy, who's ready for some coffee and pie?" He just walked right over to the coffee maker and started putting in a filter. He just left me there, left me to be the one to say no, to be the bad guy. I had to look at my own son and say, "Ralph, I can't. This dinner is your Christmas present." The look he gave me, it was like I was the one being unfair. He was embarrassed, and he was angry at me for it. He didn't say another word. He just grabbed Julie, and they left within 10 minutes. Michael just kept fiddling with the coffee pot, pretending he hadn't heard a thing. Then my mind jumped to the very next year, 2 years ago. I thought, okay, that money thing was a one-off. He was in a bind. This year will be better. I decided to make a turkey, but I tried a new brining recipe that I'd read about. I was so proud of it. The skin was perfectly brown and crispy. I brought it to the table, and Michael carved it. I watched Julie take her first bite. She chewed it slowly, put her fork down, and looked at Ralph. "Oh," she said, with that little tight smile she does. "It's different than last year, isn't it? It's a little on the dry side, don't you think?" I just froze. In front of the whole family. In front of my family, at my table, after I had been up since 5 in the morning. I wasn't expecting a medal, but dry? It wasn't dry. It was juicy and flavorful. I looked at Ralph, expecting him to say, "No, it's great, honey," or "Come on, Julie, be nice." Just defend his mother. Ralph just shrugged. He didn't even look at me. He just took another bite and said, "It's fine, Julie." Fine. Like it was a TV dinner I'd microwaved. And Michael, my husband, sitting right next to me at the head of the table, he just kept eating. Not one word. He didn't say, "I think it's delicious, Nancy." He didn't say, "Julie, that's not very kind." He said nothing. His silence was deafening. It was like he was agreeing with her. I wanted to crawl under the table. I felt myself shrink. I just got up and said I needed to check on the pies, and I stood in the kitchen for 5 minutes, just breathing, telling myself not to cry on Christmas Day. These moments, they weren't just about money or food. They were about respect, or the complete lack of it. They were about appreciation. They made me feel invisible, like a household appliance. I was just the cook, the cleaner, the person who was supposed to provide this perfect day for them. And if it wasn't up to their standards, they had every right to complain. And the whole time, my daughter Susan is on the other side of the country. We'd had a long talk just last week. She called to check in. "Mom," she'd said, "how are you holding up? Are you letting Dad help with the Christmas prep?" I just sighed. "Oh, your father, honey. He's staying out of the way." There was a long pause on the phone. "Mom, that's not helping. That's just hiding." She knew. She always knew. "Please don't do it all yourself. Why don't you just tell Ralph and Julie to cater the main course this year, if they won't cook? They live 15 minutes away. It's the least they could do." I laughed, but it was a sad sound. "Oh, honey, I can't do that. It would start a war." "So let it," she said, and I could hear how angry she was for me. "You're not their servant, Mom. You're 68 years old. You're supposed to be enjoying your retirement, not running a restaurant for ungrateful people." She was right. Every word she said was true. So why did I keep doing it? I knew the answer, and it made me feel even more trapped. The grandkids. I love my grandchildren. I love their noise. I love the way they run into the house and shout, "Grandma!" I love the magic of it for them. I want them to have these memories, the smell of the house at Christmas, the big tree, the pile of cookies. I keep telling myself I'm doing it for them, that I'm swallowing my pride and my anger for them. But as I stood there Christmas Eve, staring at that spoon, I realized what a terrible excuse that was. What am I teaching them? I'm teaching them that it's okay for their father to disrespect his mother. I'm teaching them that Grandma has no feelings, that her work doesn't matter. I'm teaching them that Grandpa sits in his chair while Grandma does all the work. That's not the memory I want to leave them with. I felt so completely and utterly alone. I was stuck. I was in a vice. On one side, I had a son and daughter-in-law who saw me as nothing more than a utility. And on the other side, I had a husband who, in his desperate need to avoid a single unpleasant moment, would just abandon me. He would let me take the hits. He would let me be criticized. He would let me be the bad guy. And that passivity, that silence, it was just as hurtful as Ralph's entitlement. Maybe more, because he's supposed to be my partner. He's supposed to be my team. But I had no team. I was a team of one. And this one-woman team was officially clocking out. I woke up on Christmas morning before the sun, that feeling I had on Christmas Eve, that I'm done feeling. It was still there, sitting like a cold stone in my stomach. But what was I supposed to do? It was Christmas Day. The grandkids were coming. So, like I've done for 40 years, I got up, put the coffee on, and went to the kitchen. I went through the motions. I put the turkey in the oven. I started peeling the potatoes for the mashed potatoes. Michael came in around 7, poured himself a cup of coffee, and said, "Morning, hon, Merry Christmas. Smells wonderful in here already." He didn't seem to notice the silence from me. He didn't notice that I just nodded and said Merry Christmas without looking at him. He went to his recliner, turned on the morning news, and stayed out of the way. The grandkids, thank heavens for them, came bursting in around noon, full of sugar and excitement. They ran to me, hugged my legs, and shoved their new toys in my face. For a little while, I could almost forget. I could smile and be Grandma. But then, at 2 o'clock, 1 hour late, Ralph and Julie walked in. No knock. They just used their key and came right in the side door. "Merry Christmas," Ralph yelled, walking into the kitchen. Julie was right behind him. And just like I knew it would be, their hands were completely, totally empty. No gift bag for me or Michael. No hostess gift. No bottle of wine for the table. No dish of cookies. Not even a bag of dinner rolls. They walked in, took off their coats, and Julie immediately looked at the stove. "Wow, you really went all out again, Nancy. I'm exhausted just looking at all this." She said it like she was paying me a compliment, but it felt like a jab. Ralph walked over, lifted the lid on the gravy, and said, "Smells good, Mom. We're starving. Is it ready?" I just nodded and said, "5 minutes. Go on into the living room." Michael was already on the floor, playing with the grandkids, building something with blocks. He was in his happy place, insulated from all of it. We all sat down at the table. It was the same scene it was every year. The good china, the crystal glasses, the holiday tablecloth. I only use once a year. I brought out the turkey, and Michael carved it. I brought out the pot roast, the mashed potatoes, the green bean casserole, the sweet potatoes with marshmallows, the homemade cranberry sauce. The table was groaning with food that I had planned, shopped for, and cooked, all by myself. We started eating. The kids were chattering. Michael was asking Ralph about his job, and I was just quiet. I was pushing food around on my plate. I was watching them. I watched Ralph take a huge helping of turkey. I watched Julie take a tiny, critical scoop of the mashed potatoes. And then it happened. Ralph was in the middle of a bite. He stopped chewing, frowned, and looked at his plate. He said. He took a big drink of water. "This turkey's a little on the dry side this year, Mom." He said it so casually, not mean, just like an observation, like he was a food critic at a restaurant he was reviewing. Before I could even register the sting, Julie chimed in. She poked at her potatoes with her fork. "And the mashed potatoes are a bit lumpy." That was it. It wasn't just the words. It was the ease with which they said them. The entitlement, the complete, breathtaking thoughtlessness, all the anger from the night before, all the resentment from the past 3 years, all the loneliness I felt, it just exploded. But I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just very slowly, very deliberately put my fork and my knife down on my plate. The clink of the porcelain was loud. It was so loud that the conversation just stopped. Even the grandkids went quiet. Everyone was looking at me. I looked right past Michael, right past Julie, and I settled my eyes on my son, Ralph. My voice was quiet. It was steady. It was cold. "I'm tired," I said. Ralph looked confused. He was still holding his fork. "Tired of what, Mom? It's Christmas. You should sit down." "I'm tired," I said again, my voice a little stronger. "I'm tired of carrying the weight of this holiday every single year. All of it. The shopping, the planning, the $400 on groceries, the cooking, the cleaning. I'm tired of it." You could have heard a pin drop. Ralph looked genuinely stunned. His mouth was hanging open a little. I don't think it had ever, in his entire life, occurred to him that I didn't enjoy being his servant. Julie, on the other hand, went red. Her eyes narrowed. "Well, Nancy," she said, her voice sharp and defensive, "we never asked you to do all this. We just thought you liked doing it. If it's such a burden, you should have just said something. You should have just said something." The audacity of that. It almost took my breath away. But as angry as her words made me, I barely heard them, because in that moment, my eyes had moved to the head of the table, to my husband. I was looking right at him, begging him with my eyes, "Say something. Back me up. Be my husband." And Michael was frozen. He was staring at his plate of food as if it held the answers to the universe. His knuckles were white on the carving knife next to his hand. He wouldn't look at me. He wouldn't look at Ralph. He just sat there in a block of ice. He said nothing, absolutely nothing. And in that one horrible, silent second, I realized the truth. The criticism from Ralph and Julie, that was just a pinprick. It was annoying, but it didn't really hurt. This was the knife. The silence from my husband. The way he just sat there and let me twist in the wind. The way he let them criticize me. The way he let Julie make it my fault. He was abandoning me right here in front of our children. He was supposed to be my partner, but I was all alone. And that silence, his absolute refusal to be on my team, that hurt more than any dry turkey comment ever could. I kept my eyes on Michael. I just stared at him. It probably only lasted 5 seconds, but it felt like an hour. I was waiting. I was giving him a chance. And he just stared at his plate. He wouldn't look at me. Finally, he gave a tiny, almost invisible shake of his head, cleared his throat, and picked up his fork. That was it. That was the signal. The battle was over, and I had lost. Or maybe I'd won, I wasn't sure. But my partner had made his choice. He chose silence. Michael took a bite of his food. And just like that, the spell was broken. Everyone else, awkwardly, picked up their forks too. But the talking was gone. You know what's louder than a house full of people arguing? A house full of people who want to argue, but can't. The only sounds were the scrape of silverware on my good china. Scrape, clink, scrape. It was deafening. It was the most awful meal I have ever sat through. My little granddaughter, Emmy, who's only 5, must have felt it. She's a sensitive one. She looked around the table with her big, brown eyes and asked in her little voice, "Why is everyone quiet? Is Christmas over?" Julie, my daughter-in-law, just reached over and snapped at her. "Eat your food. Emmy, just be quiet." Emmy's face crumpled, and her lip started to quiver. That just made me even angrier. Now the kids were being punished because the adults were acting like children. I looked over at Ralph and Julie. They weren't eating. They were leaning their heads close together, whispering. It was that angry, buzzing kind of whispering. They'd stop, and Julie would shoot me a look that could have curdled milk. Ralph just looked red and puffy, like a little boy who'd been told no for the first time. They were mad at me. I was the one who was wrong. I was the one who had broken the rules. The rules that said, Nancy does everything, and we get to treat her however we want. I just sat there. I didn't eat another bite. I felt strangely calm, but it was a cold, hard calm. I had said what I said, and Michael had done what he did, or didn't do. There was no going back. I just watched them. I watched them stew in their own anger, and I watched my husband pretend to be fascinated by his mashed potatoes. Usually, this is when I'd be up, clearing plates, asking who wants coffee, who wants pie. I had an apple pie and a pumpkin cheesecake in the kitchen. I hadn't even cut them yet. I didn't move. I just sat there in my chair at the end of the table. The silence just stretched and stretched. It got so thick, it felt like you could have cut it with a knife. Finally, Julie couldn't take it anymore. She threw her napkin down on her plate, her barely touched plate, and stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the wood floor. "We should get going," she announced. Not to me, just to the room. Ralph stood up immediately, like he'd been waiting for the signal. "Yeah, we've got to go." He didn't look at me. He didn't look at Michael. He just started grabbing the kids' coats. "Emmy, Ben, let's go. Get your shoes." The kids looked confused. But Grandpa was going to show us his train. Ben said, "Not today," Ralph said, his voice tight. "We're leaving." They got their coats on. Michael, bless his heart, at least stood up and walked them to the door, trying to pretend. "Well, it was so good to see you kids. Merry Christmas," he said, his voice straining to sound cheerful. The grandkids hugged him, and they hugged me, but it was all rushed. Julie was already out the door. Ralph stood in the doorway for a second, his back to me. He muttered something. I think it was, "Thanks for, dinner." He said it to the floor. And then he was gone. The front door clicked shut, and the silence that came back, it was worse. It was hollow, empty. Michael came back into the dining room. And you know what? Now he starts to help. Now he's clearing the table. He started grabbing plates, stacking them, making all kinds of noise. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Anything to fill the emptiness. I just sat there for another minute. Then I slowly got up and started scraping the plates. All that food, all that wasted food. I carried them into the kitchen and started loading the dishwasher. We worked side by side for maybe 5 minutes. Not one word. I was at the sink running hot water over the roasting pan when he finally spoke. He came up behind me. He didn't touch me. He just stood there. I heard him let out this long, heavy, frustrated sigh. "Nancy," he said, "I didn't turn around." "What, Michael? Did you really have to do that? Today, on Christmas Day, in front of the grandchildren?" I turned off the water. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip from the faucet. I turned around slowly and looked right at him. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just empty. "Do what, Michael?" I asked, my voice flat. "Do what? Tell the truth. For the first time, after 3 years of being their cook, their cleaner, and their bank, I finally say one true thing, and I'm the one who ruined Christmas." "You embarrassed them, Nancy," he said, his voice rising. "You embarrassed me. That's family stuff. You don't do that. You don't air that out at the table like that." That's when I felt something snap. "I embarrassed you? No, Michael. You embarrassed me." His face changed. He looked confused. "I looked at you," I said, my voice shaking just a little. "When she said the potatoes were lumpy, when he said the turkey was dry, I looked right at you. I was begging you, Michael, just with my eyes, begging you to be on my team, to say one thing, to just say, 'I think it's delicious, Nancy,' or 'That's not a very nice thing to say.' Anything. And you just sat there. You stared at your plate like a coward." He recoiled like I'd slapped him. "Nancy." "No," I said, holding up my hand. "You let them walk all over me. You let them criticize me in my own home, at my own table, after I spent 2 solid days cooking for them. You sat there and you said nothing. You let it happen. I have never, in my 35 years of marriage to you, felt so completely alone as I did sitting right next to you at that table today." I could see the hurt in his eyes, but I didn't care. My son disrespects me, and my husband just sits there and lets it happen. So don't you dare talk to me about ruining Christmas. You're just as much to blame as they are. You're just quieter about it. I turned my back on him. I turned the hot water back on, as hot as it would go, and I started scrubbing that pan. He just stood there. I could feel him standing there, behind me. He had no answer. He knew it was true. After a long minute, I just heard his footsteps walking away, back to the living room, back to his recliner, back to his silence. And I was alone in the kitchen again, just like always. I stood at that sink for I don't know how long, just letting the hot water run over my hands. The house was dead quiet. I could hear the faint murmur of the television in the living room, which meant Michael was back in his recliner, hiding, hiding from me, hiding from the fight, hiding from himself. I finished the last pan, dried my hands, and walked through the dining room. The table was a war zone. Half-eaten plates of food, wadded-up napkins, my good china splattered with gravy. It looked sad. All that work, all that effort. For what? To be criticized and then abandoned? I felt so hollow and so completely, terribly alone. I'd stood up to my son, only to be cut off at the knees by my own husband. I'd felt betrayed by Ralph for years, but this feeling, this betrayal by Michael, it was a deeper, colder kind of hurt. I walked into my bedroom, closing the door quietly. I sat on the edge of the bed. I needed an anchor. I needed to know I wasn't the crazy one. I needed to hear a voice that was on my team. I picked up my phone. My hands were shaking just a little. I hit the number for Susan. It was earlier in Oregon. I knew that. She was probably right in the middle of her own Christmas with her family. I felt a quick stab of guilt for bothering her, but it was drowned out by a desperate need to talk to her. She picked up on the third ring, her voice bright and full of cheer. "Mom, Merry Christmas. I was just about to call you. How was dinner? Did Ralph and Julie actually behave themselves this year?" And just like that, hearing her voice, her normal, happy, loving voice, it just broke me. All that cold, hard anger I'd been holding on to, it shattered. My throat closed up. I tried to answer, but all that came out was this choked, watery sound. Her tone changed in a heartbeat. Mom, what's wrong? Are you okay? Where's Dad?" "Oh, honey," I whispered, and then the tears started. Not loud, messy sobs. Just the quiet, exhausted tears of someone who has nothing left. It was awful, Susan. It was the worst Christmas I've ever had. "What happened?" she said, her voice sharp now, all business. "What did they do?" So I told her. I told her everything, starting from the moment they walked in the door, empty-handed, for the fourth year in a row. I told her about the comments. He said my turkey was dry, Susan. And Julie said the potatoes were lumpy. I heard her suck in her breath. "They what? Are you kidding me, Mom? After you? Oh, I am going to call him." The nerve, the absolute, unbelievable nerve of those two. Hearing her get angry for me, it was like a weight lifting. It was the first time all day I felt like I wasn't just imagining things. "But Susan," I said, my voice getting a little stronger. This time, I didn't just take it. I snapped. I put my fork down, and I told him. I said I was tired. I said I was tired of carrying this whole holiday, all by myself, year after year. There was a second of dead silence on the phone. Then Susan's voice came back, and it was full of something I hadn't expected. "Good," she said. "No, Mom, good for you. It is about time. It is long past time. I am so proud of you for finally saying it. What did he do? What did Ralph say?" This was the part one was dreading. My voice got quiet again. He just looked stunned, like I'd slapped him. And Julie, of course, got defensive and said I should have just said something if I felt that way. "Oh, of course she did," Susan said, disgust in her voice. "Blame you. Typical." "But honey," I said, and I had to stop and take a shaky breath. That wasn't the worst part. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Your father," I whispered. I looked at your father. I looked right at him, Susan. I was begging him, just with my eyes. Just back me up, Michael, be on my team. Just say anything. And Susan prompted. He didn't. He said nothing. He froze. He stared at his plate. He wouldn't look at me. He let them. He let them criticize me. He let Julie turn it around on me. And he just sat there in silence. He just abandoned me. For a good 10 seconds, there was no sound on the phone. I thought maybe we'd gotten disconnected. Susan, her voice, when it came back, was low and furious. He what? Mom, he just sat there? He let them gang up on you? At your own table? She sounded as betrayed as I felt. What is wrong with him? He's supposed to be your husband. And then I had to tell her the rest. He waited till they left. They stormed out, of course. And he came into the kitchen, and he had the nerve to ask me why I had to ruin Christmas. He said I embarrassed him. This time, Susan just exploded. Oh, that is it. I am calling him right now. That is the most cowardly thing I have ever heard. He's not embarrassed, Mom. He's a coward. He's just embarrassed that you finally showed a spine, and he didn't. That is unbelievable. I feel so alone. Honey, I whispered, tears rolling down my face again. I feel like I'm the only one. I don't know what to do. Okay, listen to me, Mom, Susan said, her voice firm and strong. It was my daughter, but she sounded like the parent now. First of all, you are not alone. You have me. You hear me? You have me, and I am 100% on your side. Second, you did absolutely nothing wrong. You understand me? Nothing. You spoke the truth. You are allowed to have feelings. You are not their servant. She took a deep breath. Third, Dad, Mom, you and Dad are supposed to be a team. That's what marriage is. He's supposed to be your partner, not just some roommate who hides in his chair. He failed you today. He failed you, and that is not okay. You can't let that go. I didn't know what that meant. What do I do? You do not back down, she said, her voice hard as steel. You do not apologize. You do not let him sweep this under the rug. You deserve to be happy, Mom. You deserve to be respected. And if Dad won't stand up for you, then you have to keep standing up for yourself. And you have to stand up to him. You tell him what you told me, that he left you alone, that he was a coward. You tell him that. Do not back down. We talked for a few more minutes. She made me promise. Promise me, Mom. Promise me you won't just make nice tomorrow morning. This is it. This is the moment. I promised. When I hung up the phone, the house was still quiet, but something in me had changed. The doubt was gone. The guilt was gone. Susan's anger had been like a shot of adrenaline. It wasn't just my anger anymore. It was righteous. I wasn't the one who ruined Christmas. They were. Ralph, Julie, and Michael. I wasn't just sad anymore. I was strong. And I knew she was right. This was far from over. This wasn't just about Ralph anymore. This was about my marriage. And I knew my next fight wasn't going to be with my son. It was going to be with my husband. I sat on my bed for a long time after I hung up with Susan. I finally stood up, walked over to my dresser, and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked old, not just 68. I looked exhausted, and my eyes were puffy from crying. But there was something else there, too. A hardness, a stillness. Susan's words were ringing in my ears. Do not back down. I opened the bedroom door. The house was quiet. Michael was asleep in his recliner. The TV remote still clutched in his hand, a rerun of some old Christmas movie playing silently. I just looked at him. My husband, the man who had sat there and let me be attacked, the man who had then blamed me for the fight. I felt a cold, hard knot of anger in my chest. I didn't wake him. I just grabbed a pillow and a blanket from the hall closet and went to the guest room. I did not sleep in my bed with him that night. I'm not sure if I slept at all. I just kept thinking about the next morning, the day after Christmas. By tradition, Ralph and Julie and the kids always come back. We do a big breakfast, pancakes and bacon, and all the leftover pie. And that's when we exchange our gifts with them. All the grandkids' main presents were still under the tree. I used to dread this day because it was just more cooking, more cleaning. But this was a new kind of dread. It was a cold, sick feeling in the pit of my stomach. What would happen? Would they even show up? And what would be worse? If they did, or if they didn't. If they didn't come, it meant I had finally broken my family. If they did come, how could we even look at each other? I got up early, out of habit more than anything. I went into the kitchen. Michael was already there, pouring coffee. He looked terrible. He had dark circles under his eyes, and he was still in the clothes he'd worn yesterday. He must have woken up in his chair and seen my side of the bed empty. "Nancy," he said, his voice all gravelly. He held out a mug of coffee for me. I just looked at it. "No, thank you," I said, my voice polite and cool. I walked past him to the refrigerator and got out the orange juice. "Nancy, please," he started. We need to talk about yesterday." "No," I said, not looking at him. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your position perfectly clear. You said nothing." "It's not that simple," he said, his voice rising in that frustrated way he has. "You put me in an impossible spot." I turned and looked at him. "No, Michael, you put me in an impossible spot. For years. I'm not doing it anymore." Right then, we heard a key in the side door. My stomach just dropped to the floor. It was them. Ralph, Julie, and the kids. They came in, but it wasn't the usual noisy, happy tumbling in. They were quiet. The kids looked nervous. Ralph's face was sullen and pouty. Julie looked like she'd been sucking on a lemon. They didn't come in for a hug. They just stood there in the kitchen. And then Michael just transformed. It was pathetic, really. He suddenly became this cheerful, loud, cruise director version of himself. Hey, there they are," he boomed, his voice at least 2 octaves too high. "Merry Christmas, everybody. Good to see you. Who wants pancakes? Nancy, are we making pancakes?" He was looking at me, desperate, pleading with me to just play along. Just pretend. Put the mask back on. I looked at him, and then I looked at Ralph and Julie. "Hello, Ralph. Hello, Julie. The pancake mix is in the pantry, Michael. You know where the bowls are." And I walked right past all of them into the living room and sat down in the armchair. Not my recliner. The stiff armchair that nobody ever sits in. The silence that followed was awful. I could hear Michael in the kitchen making all kinds of noise, clanging bowls, slamming the refrigerator door. "Well, okay then. Pancakes it is," he yelled to no one. Julie and Ralph slowly followed me into the living room and sat on the sofa as far away from me as they could get. The kids saw the presents under the tree, and, being kids, they at least got a little excited. "Can we open them, Grandma?" Ben asked. "Ask your father," I said, my voice still perfectly level, perfectly calm. Ralph just grunted. "Yeah, sure. Go ahead." So the kids started tearing into the presents. But the whole atmosphere was just poisoned. Michael kept trying to yell things from the kitchen. "Wow, look at that. A new fire truck. Isn't that great, Ben?" His voice was cracking with the strain of it. Ralph and Julie just sat there, sullen, silent. They were shooting me little, angry looks when they thought I wasn't watching. They were the ones who had been wronged. They were the victims. I just sat there and observed. I watched my husband, a man I'd been married to for 35 years, desperately trying to paste over the gaping wound he had helped create. He was trying to jolly everyone into submission, and it was just making it worse. It was making him look weak. And I looked at my son, a grown man, pouting like a child because his mother had finally refused to be his doormat. Right then, with Susan's words in my head, "You deserve to be happy, Mom. Do not back down," I realized the truth. I wasn't just done with the cooking. I was done with this. This whole charade. This whole toxic, one-sided, broken dynamic. It wasn't just that I was done hosting Christmas. I was done, period. I was done with Ralph's entitlement. I was done with Julie's criticism. And most of all, I was done with Michael's passivity. I was done being the only grown-up in the room. This wasn't a family. It was a performance. And I was quitting the show. The pancakes sat untouched. Michael had made a whole stack of them, and they were just sitting on a platter in the middle of the table, getting cold. He had tried, with that loud, fake cheerfulness, to get everyone to eat. "Come on, kids. Hot pancakes." Ralph, Julie, they all just shook their heads. Ralph and Julie were still sitting on the sofa, stiff as boards. The kids had ripped open their presents, but even that was quiet. There were no shouts of joy. They'd just pull a toy out, look at it, and put it down. The whole morning was just poisoned. The air was thick and sour. Finally, after what felt like 3 hours, Julie stood up. She didn't look at me. She just looked at Ralph. "We're going," she said. It wasn't a request. Ralph stood up like a puppet on a string. "Yeah, we should go." He started rounding up the kids. "Ben, Emmy, get your new stuff. We're leaving." But I didn't eat my pancake. Ben said, "You can eat at home." Julie snapped. They gathered their things. This time, Michael didn't even try. His fake cheerfulness was gone. He just stood by the kitchen counter, looking defeated, watching them. They all shuffled to the door. "No, thank you for the gifts." "No, Merry Christmas." Nothing. I just sat in the armchair and watched them go. The door clicked shut, and the silence that fell on the house this time, it was absolute. Michael let out a long, heavy breath. He looked like a balloon that had been popped. He walked over, picked up the cold plate of pancakes, and dumped the whole stack of them right into the trash can. It was such a sad, final sound. He turned on the sink, started running the water, picking up wrapping paper. He was doing it again. Hiding. Hiding in the noise. Hiding in the cleanup. Pretending if he just cleaned up the mess, the problem would go away. Susan's voice was in my head. "Do not back down." "Michael," I said. He kept his back to me. "What, Nancy? What now? Are you happy? You got what you wanted. They're gone. Christmas is officially ruined." "Stop," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut right through the sound of the running water. "Stop cleaning and turn around." He sighed, that heavy, put-upon sigh, as if I was the one bothering him. He turned off the water. He slowly turned around, leaning back against the counter. He crossed his arms. "What?" "Sit down," I said, motioning to the kitchen table. "Nancy, I really don't think." "Sit down." He huffed, but he did it. He pulled out the chair he'd sat in yesterday and sat down, looking at me like I was the principal and he'd been sent to the office. I didn't sit. I stood. I needed to stand. "I slept in the guest room last night," I said. He just nodded. "I noticed. I spent all night," I said, "thinking about what you said, how I embarrassed you, how I ruined Christmas." "Well, you can't say it went well," he muttered, picking at the tablecloth. "No, it didn't go well," I said. "It was a disaster. But that disaster didn't start yesterday, Michael. It started years ago. It started every time Ralph was disrespectful, and you said nothing. It started every time Julie made a nasty comment, and you just kept eating. It started every time I was left in the kitchen alone, exhausted, while you stayed out of the way. He opened his mouth to argue, but I held up my hand. I'm not done. I've been thinking about this for a long time. For 35 years of marriage, I have been the one. I've been the peacemaker. I've been the one to smooth things over, to bite my tongue, to make sure everyone is happy, to just absorb it. I've absorbed Ralph's entitlement, and I've absorbed your silence. I walked a little closer to the table. I am 68 years old, Michael, and I am tired. I will not be the family doormat anymore. Not for them. I paused, and I looked him right in the eye. And not for you. He recoiled a little. That's not fair, Nancy. Isn't it? I said. I am done being the only bad guy. I'm done being the one who has to set the boundaries, and then be called a monster for it, while you get to stand on the sidelines and pretend to be the nice guy. That's not being nice, Michael. That's not peace. That's just letting me take all the bullets. Yesterday, at that table, that was abandonment. You abandoned me. He flinched. That word, it hit him. I could see it. I love you, I said, and my voice softened just a little. You are my husband. I have loved you for almost 40 years. But I cannot. I will not live like this anymore. I won't be the only grown-up in this family. I won't be the only one with a spine. From now on, we are a team. A real team. We stand side by side. We back each other up. We are a united front, or I am done with all of it. He looked at me, his eyes wide. Done? Done with what? With me? Are you talking about leaving? I'm talking about being done with this, I said, gesturing to the empty, disastrous room. I'm done with this version of our family. I'm done with this version of us. I'm done playing a part. If being your wife means I have to be a punching bag for our son and get zero support from my husband, then yes, I am done with that. Completely. He just stared at me. The silence stretched on, but this time it was different. It wasn't an empty silence. I could see him. I could see the wheels turning. He was looking at me, really looking at me, not as his wife, not as the cook, but as a person who had just drawn a line in the sand. He was finally seeing that I wasn't just mad. I was gone. He finally looked down at his hands on the table. He looked old. He looked scared. You're right, he whispered. I almost didn't hear him. What? He looked up at me, and his eyes were watery. You're right. Abandonment. That's what I did. I hate fighting Nancy. I hate it. I freeze. I always have. I just want things to be nice. I want them to be real, I said, my voice hard. Nice is it's just fake. I know, he said, and his voice cracked. I know. You were so strong. And I sat there. I let you down. I'm so sorry, Nancy. He reached his hand across the table. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to be that man. I've been that man. I don't know how to fight with him. Nan, he's my son. You don't have to fight with him, Michael, I said, and I finally sat down opposite him. You just have to stand with me. He nodded, a real, slow, painful nod. He took my hand. His was shaking. Okay, he said. Okay, a team. You're right. We're a team. I'm with you. I promise. I will be better. I am on your team. It was a breakthrough. It was the first real, honest-to-God breakthrough we'd had in our marriage in maybe 20 years. It felt fragile, but it was real. He squeezed my hand. So, he said, and he took a shaky breath. What do we do next? That conversation, the one where I finally stood up to Michael, it changed everything. The week that followed was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet. It wasn't the old, angry, staying out of the way silence. It was a fragile, new, what do we do now silence. We spent that first day, the day after Christmas, cleaning up the mess together. And I mean together. Michael didn't just help. He was there. He scrubbed the roasting pan without me asking. He vacuumed the living room. We packed up all the Christmas decorations together in almost total silence. But it was a working silence, a partnership. That night, we didn't eat leftovers. We couldn't even look at them. Michael just said, "Get your coat. Let's go out." We went to a little Italian place we like, and we just talked. We really talked. For the first time in I don't know how long. It wasn't easy. He had to listen to me tell him, again, how much his passivity had hurt me. How it wasn't just about Christmas. It was about him letting me be the family's bad guy for our entire marriage. I had to listen to him tell me how he was raised to believe that a quiet house was a happy house, and how he freezes, how my anger scares him. We laid it all out, all the ugly, dusty, hidden things. It was hard. It was painful. But by the time we paid the check, we were holding hands. It felt new, like we were dating again. Only this time we actually knew who the other person was. The next few days were nice. We took walks. We sat on the porch and read our books. We were a team. We were a couple. The giant black cloud of Christmas. And Ralph wasn't hanging over us. We were just Michael and Nancy. New Year's Eve came and went. We didn't do anything big. We opened a bottle of wine, watched the ball drop on TV, and we were in bed by 12:30. It was peaceful. Then, about a week after the big fight, the phone rang. It was a Tuesday morning. We were sitting at the kitchen table, just finishing our coffee and reading the paper. I looked at the caller ID. Ralph. My stomach did a little flip. I looked at Michael. This was it. This was the first test of our united front. He saw my face. He put his paper down. He reached across the table and put his hand on my arm. "We're a team, Nan," he said, his voice quiet and firm. "Remember, we're a team. Put it on speaker." I took a breath. I picked up the phone. "Hello, Ralph." Hi, Mom." His voice was small. It wasn't his usual loud, confident self. He sounded humbled. Is Dad there?" "I'm right here, son," Michael said, leaning toward the phone. I had already put it on speaker and set it in the middle of the table. There was a long pause. "Oh, good." He took a deep breath. I could hear him. "Look, I've been doing a lot of thinking. This last week, Michael and I just looked at each other. We didn't say anything. We just waited. I'm sorry," Ralph stammered. "About, Christmas. I guess I'm sorry. I didn't mean, I guess I just took. Well, I'm sorry." It wasn't the world's greatest apology. It was clumsy, and he was clearly struggling. But it was an apology. He had never, in his entire adult life, apologized to me for anything. And he continued, rushing on. "Julie and we were talking. We know we messed up, and we want to help next year. We really do. So what can we plan to cook? Or we could host. At our place. Whatever you want. We want to make it right." There it was. The offer we'd been wanting for a decade. I looked at Michael. I looked at this man I had been married to for 35 years. He was looking right back at me. And in that one look, we had a whole conversation. We saw the trap. We saw the easy way out, to just say, "That's wonderful, Ralph," and fall right back into the same old broken system. But we also saw each other. We saw the couple who had gone out for Italian. We saw the couple who had held hands and finally told the truth. Michael gave me a small, firm nod. A "we're in this together" nod. I took a deep breath. My voice came out perfectly calm. Not angry, not triumphant, just peaceful. "Oh, that's very thoughtful of you, Ralph," I said. "But you don't have to worry about that." There was a confused silence on the line. What do you mean?" "Mom, I'm serious. We want to do it. We want to make it right." And that's when my husband, my partner, leaned in. His voice was steady. It wasn't passive. It wasn't aggressive. It was just factual. "What your mother means, son," Michael said, "is that, well, we've made other plans. Your mother and I, we just booked a 2-week cruise. We'll be in the Bahamas for Christmas." The silence on the other end of the phone was absolute. It was so total, I actually wondered for a second if the call had dropped. I could almost hear Ralph's brain grinding to a halt, trying to compute what he'd just heard. I chimed in, my voice just as calm. "We just decided, Ralph, that after all these years, it's time for us to have our Christmas. Just the two of us. We booked it yesterday. We're very much looking forward to it." He finally found his voice. A cruise," he stammered. For Christmas? But what about the grandkids? What about tradition? What about us?" There it was. What about us? The same us that had brought nothing, complained about the food, and asked for money. Michael's voice was kind, but it was so firm. There was no wiggle room in it. "You'll have a wonderful time, Ralph. You're more than capable of making a wonderful Christmas for your own family. We'll be sure to call you from the ship." But, Ralph was stuttering. "We have to go." "Son," Michael said, cutting him off gently. "Your mother and I were just heading out the door." "Oh," Ralph said. His voice was just flat, defeated. "Oh, okay. Well, we'll talk to you soon," I said. "Bye-bye." I hung up the phone. The kitchen was silent. I looked at Michael. He looked at me. And then we both smiled. Not a big, triumphant laugh. Just a slow, deep, relieved smile. The weight of 20 Christmases, it just evaporated. It was gone. I felt light. I felt free. I knew in that moment that a lot of people would say we were being selfish, that we were abandoning our family, that we were punishing our grandchildren for their parents' mistakes. I could already hear what people in the neighborhood might whisper, but as I sat there across the table from my husband, the man who was finally truly my partner, I didn't feel selfish. I felt saved. We had saved ourselves. We had finally, after all these years, put our marriage, our peace, and our happiness first. We were a team, and our team was, for the first time in a long time, heading in the same direction. This Christmas, I woke up at 8 o'clock. I didn't wake up to the jolt of a 5 a.m. alarm set in a panic. I woke up to a sliver of bright Caribbean sun cutting across our cabin. Michael was already up. He was sitting on our little private balcony, reading a book. He'd already gotten us coffee from the little cafe downstairs. I put on a light robe, not my old, stained apron, and I sat down next to him. We just sat. We watched the turquoise blue water go by. There was no turkey to baste. There were no potatoes to peel. There was no knot of dread in my stomach. It was just quiet. "Merry Christmas, Nan," he said, putting his hand on mine. "Merry Christmas, Michael," I said, and for the first time in a long time, I actually meant it. We spent the day doing whatever we wanted. We read by the pool. We took a walk around the deck. We even took a nap. I hadn't taken a nap on Christmas Day since, well, maybe never. That evening, the ship was having a big festive dinner. They called it Christmas Under the Stars on the top deck. The whole place was strung with thousands of tiny white lights, and the warm breeze was just, it was wonderful. A steel drum band was playing Jingle Bells. It was impossible not to smile. We found a table with two other couples we'd met a few days earlier, one from Canada, one from England. We sat and talked. We talked about our kids, our grandkids, about our retirements. We just laughed. I mean, really laughed. The woman from England, Clara, was telling a story about her own daughter-in-law and a disastrous attempt at a fruitcake. And I felt so light. I wasn't the host. I wasn't the cook. I wasn't the cleaner. I was just Nancy, a person. Michael leaned over and refilled my wine glass. He looked at me, his eyes clear and happy. He raised his glass. To new traditions, he said, his voice just for me. I clinked his glass. To us, I said. And right at that moment, my phone, which I just set on the table, buzzed. My heart did that familiar little jump. You can be 1,000 miles away on a cruise ship, but you're still a mother. The screen said, Ralph, video call. I looked at Michael. This was it. The moment of truth. He didn't flinch. He just smiled, squeezed my hand under the table, and nodded. Team, he whispered, so quietly no one else could hear. I took a breath and hit the accept button. Their faces filled the screen, all huddled together. Ralph, Julie, and the grandkids. They were on their sofa in their living room, and the room was a mess. A total, glorious, happy mess. Wrapping paper was everywhere. It looked like a toy store had exploded. Julie looked exhausted. She was in her pajamas, holding a giant mug of coffee like it was a lifeline. Ralph looked tired, too, but he wasn't pouting. He wasn't angry. He just looked like a father who had been up since 5 a.m. with two very excited kids. Grandma! Grandpa! Emmy shrieked, trying to grab the phone. Merry Christmas! Look, I got the doll. The big one. Merry Christmas, sweetie. I laughed. It's beautiful. Merry Christmas, Ben. Merry Christmas, Ralph, Julie. Merry Christmas, Mom. Merry Christmas, Dad, Ralph said. His voice was quiet. He looked right at the camera, right at me. Julie leaned in, and she gave a small, tired wave. Merry Christmas, she said. It was the first time she'd spoken to me, with no edge, just exhaustion. It looks like you two have been busy, Michael said, smiling. Ralph let out a short, tired laugh. Oh, my God, Dad, you have no idea. We've been up since 4:30. I'm so tired. He ran a hand through his messy hair, and then his face changed. He looked humbled. He wasn't the pouty boy from last year. He was a man. A tired man, but a man. Mom, Dad, he said, and he had to clear his throat. It's really not the same without you guys here. I watched him. I just waited. He looked back at Julie, who just gave a little nod. We really messed up. For a long time. I get it now. This is hard. This is a lot of work. He looked around at the mess, and then back at us. We just miss you. We miss you a lot. And there it was. Not a clumsy, forced apology. Just the truth. My heart, it did a little ache. That mother part of me. Because I love him. I love my son. But it wasn't an ache of guilt. It wasn't an ache that made me want to say, oh, we're so sorry, we'll be home next year. I'll take over. It was just love. I smiled. A real, warm, genuine smile. Oh, sweetheart, we miss you too. It looks like you're doing a wonderful job. We're very proud of you. He looked so relieved. We have to go, kids, I said. Our dinner is just arriving, but we'll see you when we get back. Okay? Okay, Mom, he said. We love you. We love you too, Michael said, his voice full. All of you. Bye-bye. I hung up the phone and set it face down on the table. Michael was just watching me. He didn't say anything. He just reached out and put his hand on top of mine. I turned my hand over and laced my fingers through his. I took a sip of my wine. The steel drum band started playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. I looked out at the dark, inky ocean, at the millions of stars, at the reflection of the little white lights on the water. And I felt a quiet, a deep, solid peace that I hadn't felt in 30 years. It wasn't the selfish pleasure of getting my way. It was the peace of knowing I had finally done the right thing. I had saved myself. I had saved my marriage. And maybe, just maybe, I had finally let my son grow up. I was at peace. We came back from that cruise in the first week of January. When I walked back into my house, it felt different. It was the same house, same furniture, same pictures on the wall. But I was different. I felt lighter. The air in the house felt lighter. It didn't feel like a stage where I was expected to perform. It just felt like my home. And my marriage, well, that's the biggest change of all. It's like Michael and I finally woke up. We spend our days as real partners. It's in the little things. He doesn't just stay out of the way anymore. He's present. He'll come into the kitchen while I'm making dinner, and he'll lean against the counter, and we'll just talk. Or he'll just start washing the vegetables. He doesn't ask. He just does it. He's on the team. When my sister called the other day and started to complain about her husband, Michael overheard me, and I heard him pipe up from the living room, "Tell Beatrice to stand her ground." I almost dropped the phone. This was the man who used to hide from conflict. It turns out he had a spine all along. He just needed, well, I guess I needed to show him it was okay to use it, that I wouldn't collapse if he had an opinion, that I needed him to have my back. Our marriage isn't just quiet and peaceful anymore. It's strong. It's real. And Ralph, well, that's a new story, too. It's not like that phone call fixed everything, and now we're a perfect family. It's a new normal. It's awkward, sometimes, but it's respectful. We saw them a few weeks after we got back. We met at a restaurant, halfway, on neutral ground. It was nice. Ralph and Julie, they were different. They asked us questions. They asked about the cruise. Julie even complimented my blouse, and I think she actually meant it. Ralph, he looked at me differently, not like I was just Mom. The appliance, like I was Nancy, a person who had her own life, a person who had left. He saw, I think for the first time, that I wasn't just a part of his life. I had my own. We've seen them a few times since. We had them over for a simple Sunday barbecue a few weeks ago. You know what they brought? 2 big, beautiful side salads, a dessert, and 2 bottles of wine. And you know what Michael did? He stood right by me at the grill, and he was the one who said, "Ralph, go grab the steaks. Julie, the plates are in that cabinet." He was a host with me, a team. I've learned a lot this past year. I've learned that tradition can be a very pretty word for a very ugly trap. It can be a word that we use to justify our own misery and to enable bad behavior. I thought I was holding the family together, but I wasn't. I was just the cork in the bottle. I was holding all that poison, all that resentment, all that unsaid stuff. I was holding it all in, and it was making me sick. It was poisoning my marriage. I've learned that it's okay to set boundaries, even with your children, especially with your children. I was so afraid that if I said no, if I finally told the truth, that I would lose them, that I would break the family. But what I had, it was already broken. All I did was stop pretending it wasn't. And my peace, I've learned that my peace of mind, my happiness, it is not selfish. It's necessary. It's the fuel I run on. I'm a better wife, a better mother, and a better grandmother now because I'm not that angry, resentful, exhausted woman anymore. I'm just me. I'm lighter. It all came to a head at that Christmas dinner. I finally said what I felt, and it led me to a confrontation with my husband and to the hardest decision I ever had to make. But it makes me wonder, have you ever felt like you were carrying all the weight of the family traditions? I finally set boundaries, but I know some people will say my husband and I went too far by booking that cruise and leaving the kids. Some will say it was selfish. Some will say we should have stayed and tried to teach them to fix the tradition, not just run away. So I have to ask you, what would you have done? Would you have stayed to try and fix the tradition, or would you have booked the flight? I truly want to know. This is my story, but I know I'm not the only one who has lived it. Please let me know in the comments what you think, and share your own stories. We can all learn from each other. And if this story touched you, if it felt real to you, please give this video a like. It really does help. Share it with someone you think might need to hear it. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future stories. Thank you so much for listening.